Falcha, it's Misha Awen. I'm River at Grounded Connections, and I wanted to talk about the spheres of familiarity because I can totally nerd about this all day long. But this is the video that will talk more about the context of the spheres, where it came from, in general, sort of usage, and why, or pretty much why we use it. And then the following videos we'll talk about each sphere individually, so you can get a better sense of what happens in those spheres, how people use them, and this one will just be a little bit more about why, what it is and why. So Language Hunters, the model itself, is really meant to be played at a table in a community center. And in order to support and accommodate the many ways of being that we are as humans, that there needed to be various ways that people could interact with the game. And so it was really invented to support that, to support intergenerational play. So elders and youth, to support folks with disabilities, to support families, people nursing or needing to put their kids, rock their kids to sleep, things like that, or just who maybe are experiencing any kind of chronic pain or illness and need to show up in various ways, but maybe they can't be at the center of gameplay, or can be for some times and then can move into other spaces. But really, like, it's meant to be welcoming, that everyone there is welcome to gameplay and is still learning Irish, still learning the language, even if they're not directly in gameplay itself. And that even on the outer rings, in other spheres, that learning of the language still happens. This is helpful, this model is really helpful for undoing ways, schooling systems that we have in our brains and in our bodies, that many of us in North America anyway are used to. And that there is a teacher up at the chalkboard, there's the students, and then you go to school for really long periods of time. And that's not really helpful for language learning. That language learning happens in kind of short bursts. And so the gameplay itself doesn't usually last more than 30-40 minutes before people feel like they're done. And that really the resting piece is essential for learning. And so these spheres that people can move in and out of support that as well. We use the spheres pretty much for everything at Grounded Connections, all of our offerings, all of our events, and even how we build our content. So we want to make it as accessible as possible for people, even in an online space. So it's an embodied way of really every day that you're gameplay, that you're checking in with yourself, seeing where you're at, noticing where you're at, and what you really need to be present. Do you need to rest? Do you need to be kind of in, kind of out, or do you really want to be in gameplay? Or do you want to switch throughout a session of gameplay? So you check in with yourself before, during, and even after. How do you feel? What do you need? And being honest about where we're at, and noticing any of the messages about where you think you should be, or what you've taught about where you think you should be. And it's an opportunity to kind of undo some of those messages that we might have received and embody a new way of learning that really supports one's own being. That this model really empowers choice in learning, which many of us have not had a lot of choice in learning. And to believe, learn to believe, and trust in yourself, and trust in others, and trust in the facilitators as well, because we are also playing within the spheres as we do gameplay. So we're learning to tap into where our capacity is at all time. And it's not only to honor ourselves, but we learn how to honor other people's capacities too. Another thing, what's really helpful, is that we can notice and pay attention to where we spend our time. So if we're someone who is in the outer ring, the meadow, which is the most restful place, and maybe you really need to be there. Like, that is where you need to be, and that's how you're learning, and that feels good for you. But if you notice that you're there and that you spend a lot of your time here, you want to move closer towards gameplay, but maybe you need a little bit of support. So the community, we can support each other to move closer to gameplay, or if you're someone who has been in gameplay every single time and beyond your own limits, like you're exhausted but you keep going because for the millions of reasons that we do things like that, and you need support moving into the outer rings towards rest. So we get to notice, where do we spend most of our time, and do we want change, and do we need support with change? So with that little bit of context, I think it's really valuable to go into what the spheres are. I'll share just a quick little overview. We have the outer ring, which is what we call the meadow. The next ring in, that's closer to gameplay, is going to be extended family. Gameplay itself is curious engagement, and then we do have a fluency, which is the person who's essentially hosting the gameplay. And so I will go in the next videos into greater detail about each individual sphere. So thank you so much. I can seriously nerd out on this all day, so ask me any questions. I love this. I just hope like this can be something that a lot of people can weave into their work, and people so far have really, really been grateful for the spheres. So thank you so much. Go Ramahagat Slan.